If you want to get better at League, the default decision of most people is just to play more games. However, hardly anyone actually goes back to review the games that they play. The reason that reviewing is such a powerful tool for improvement is for a few key reasons. First, it's incredibly difficult to actually be objective about your decisions when you're in the game and thinking of them while you're still in the game. There are so many things that could have led to you making an incorrect decision. Maybe you didn't get enough information. Maybe you misinterpreted some sort of information. Maybe you just straight up had all the information but made the wrong decision. Whatever it is, the only real way to get a full picture and make sure that you didn't misinterpret something in the game is to actually go back and look at that game state. The second thing that reviewing really helps with is building intuition. For those of you who don't play chess, there are these things called chess puzzles, where basically you go in and you're given a position on the board, and your goal is to find the next best move that will either usually get you an advantage, or maybe even win the game outright. Chess puzzles are highly recommended by a lot of chess coaches because they help people be able to more quickly recognize all these patterns that they would often see when they're playing a real chess game. Spotting these tactics when you're in a game is incredibly important. So training this over and over again, it doesn't really matter that the board position isn't exactly the same. All that matters is that there are a few key parts that lead to you being able to make that tactical move. The same exact thing goes for League. While there are an incredibly large variety of possible positions you can find yourself in a League game, you're still able to find patterns that will help you make decisions better based off your intuition. If this wasn't the case, we would have to assess every situation as a completely unique state, and then no one would really ever be able to get better. Reviewing is exactly like utilizing chess puzzles. It's about looking at your plays and mistakes and finding the best move in that situation. Today, I'm going to show you step by step how you can start getting into reviewing. Now, this section may seem strange, but I think it's really important to just lay out exactly how you should go about reviewing to make it as easy as possible for you. So first, if you can avoid it, do not look at the client replay. Being able to record your own games and watch your POV VODs, watching yourself play the game, is going to be one of the biggest things that's going to help you level up your review. When you're watching the client POV, it's just so much more difficult to understand where you are in the game. You need to watch yourself play and figure out what information are you taking in? How does your camera panning look like? What is your attention focused on? These are all the things that are integral to you being able to realize what you were thinking in game and then figure out how you need to adapt that in the future. If you can't record your own gameplay because of issues with FPS or something like that, well, first, honestly, I would just really encourage you to upgrade your PC, because if you can't even get good FPS when you're recording, it's probably going to get you way more benefit to be able to have a smooth gaming experience. That's probably going to help you out even a lot more than reviewing, if I'm being honest. If you really have to use the client replay, I would just say make sure that you're putting it so you can only see your own vision, because a lot of people are like, oh, the jungler's here, I shouldn't have made that decision. It's like, well, you didn't know that, obviously. So just make sure it's on your own vision. Now, as far as actually recording it goes, there are a ton of different software you can use, and people like a lot of different varieties of them. I personally like going the route of recording my own games just because that's how I've kind of always done it for a long time now. So personally, I use Streamlabs. It's basically like OBS, if you guys know that, which is second on this list. They're basically the same thing. They just record your screen or your game, and you're able to use it as a file. I just like Streamlabs because I'm used to it and it has like a better interface personally, I think, but really they're the same thing. So you can use either of those if you want to just actually record your screen and have the file very simply with an MP4. If you want automatic screen recording, you can use metal.tv. I used this for a while. You can use Insights Capture. Both of these are totally fine and people like them. I think they worked fine. I just didn't like not having a file as an MP4, which is the only really drawback from these. But if you don't care, just go ahead and use it. I think it's great. The final thing I want to know, and beware of a flashbang right here, is if you want to go the route of recording your own games and having an MP4 file from them, I really recommend downloading Pot Player. It's basically just a Windows video media player, and it's incredibly helpful when it comes to actually reviewing your own games, because I'm gonna click off of this really quick, because the default Windows media player is just so trash, like straight up. Like with Pot Player, you're able to use the arrow keys to go back and forth like a few seconds, and it's super clean. So I highly recommend using that. Okay, so now to get into actually what am I supposed to do when I get into the review. So you can see in this one, I've opened my file just using Pot Player. So I'm going to be going through it using that. Yeah, so what do I look for? Well, if you've never reviewed before, this is my suggestion. Either look at the first 8 minutes or your first 2 deaths, or maybe both. But be brief about it. Reviews are not supposed to be, you look through the entire game, you just sit here, watch it on 1x speed, and just go through and yada yada. Like, this is not really effective for learning. It's far too impractical. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's not going to get you a lot of benefit. Especially a lot of people get bored. Like, I would be so bored watching myself play the game for an entire game and have to like pick through every decision. It's not going to help you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you like how I would skim through the first 8 minutes and also go over my first 2 deaths to go like that. But this is really what I'm going to do. I'm just going to click through. I'm going to see if there's anything big going on. Like in this example, I'm also going to mute it. I think it's M. Yeah. Anyways. So I'm like, okay, well, let's see. It seems like I got traded on here. Is this a big issue, right? Because I'm thinking about, okay, if I'm looking at my first 8 minutes, I want to think about how I'm playing my lane out. Like this was probably not a great movement by me, right? Like I probably could have been more cognizant about like just baiting the CS and not actually trying to posture for it because I reacted way too late. So movement not that great there. Seems like I also maybe got chunked again. That one was better because I was trying to dodge it, but I wasn't able to get out of the Q range quite yet, so that's okay. Not a big deal. Seems like I maybe went for a level 2 trade. 1 cooldowns are down. Cool. I mean, not the greatest, but what are you going to do? It's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's not like I took any damage for it, so. Yeah, then I kind of just accept the wave. Okay. See how this trade goes. Okay, so a little aggressive, but yeah, it works out. I'm trading HP. This is what Akali wants. Cool. And you can see how I'm kind of just going through this. Like, I'm not going to freak out about everything, but if I'm looking at the first 8 minutes and this is what I want to refine, I'm like just thinking about, is my decision correct here? Is there something that's really bad? And I think that that's the main thing you should be looking for, especially if you're new to reviews. Look for the big things. Don't get into these minute details unless that's what you really care about. Just focus on the things that really, really hinder your game. So let's watch this trade here really quick because I know this one actually leads to a death just because I've watched the game before, of course. You can see I am walking up and then I get ganked, right? So I was going for an incredibly aggressive trade here where I E like this. And I was initially wanting to E and then Q and then auto Q to get an electrocute proc and then dip. But she ended up flashing in and then I got comboed from outside of the bush. So what's the issue here? Well, I mean, the main issue is just that I wasn't jungle tracking properly, right? We can see, obviously, I even ping it, right? You see my ping in the bottom right corner here. I know that Trundle path from bot to top. I had a ward on Raptors early on, which means I know that Gragas cleared top first, and they're going to be opposite clears then. And with this timing, it makes a lot of sense that Gragas would be able to look for a gank on either top or bot. We don't see him on bot yet, on mid or bot. And we don't see him on bot yet, so it makes a lot of sense that he would be able to show up mid here. And this is just a complete lack of being attentive to the jungler when it's most important. So hopefully that kind of gets you an idea of how you should be looking at your mistakes in your reviews. So I'll just go through and I'll look for this second death here, and I'll kind of go over the same exact thing, right? Some more trading if I want to look at that, I could kind of skim through the game. And this is where this is a lot of what your review should look like. You're just skimming through the game and finding like the most impactful moments. For me, it was deaths for a lot of the time, and I think that's a reasonable thing to look for. So this is where I end up dying. So let's kind of see what's happening here. So I see Fiora on the bottom right in the mini map, and I still end up going for an all-in on this Anivia. She flashes. I'm so oblivious to this Fiora. It's like actually crazy, by the way. But yeah, and this is just, once again, I am way too tunneled on my lane. I'm trying to look for like solo kills and flashy plays when I haven't assessed the map. And this is now a common theme that I can see in this game. And now I know what to look for going into the next game. I can be like, okay, you know what? I need to be assessing the map and figuring out where people are before I take aggressive plays. So now moving on, what if you want to look at more of the game? What if you have a specific learning objective or a goal that you're trying to accomplish because you know that's a weak point for you? So for me, that's going to be my skirmishing. That's what I was focusing on for the better part of the past 2 weeks. So I'm going to be going and skimming through all of my skirmishes. All of my fighting, I just want to look at it and see if it was absolutely garbage or if it was okay enough that I'm okay. So here I had some fighting. It looks like I landed a pretty solid E, so that, you know, it works out. Maybe, you know, I can look into this stuff, but I think if it works out, don't put too much emphasis on it. Look at the stuff that clearly does not work and figure out what's going on there. So it looks like I actually had some more fighting. Oh, very intense one. I end up getting a little bit lucky here. I think one thing that I could have probably taken away from this one is that I didn't notice the Riven coming down from top lane when she cracked the tower already. So Riven's incredibly strong at this point. I pretty much just like lucked out that I didn't get like canceled in my R there or something like that. So or like hit by the Riven at all. So I think that one's a little bit of a risky one. Looks like we have another fight going down. I'm moving towards boss line here without my ult being up. We still don't see Riven, by the way. Now we see Riven on the minimap, but I'm way more focused on trying to like kill this Fiora. And then I like go back in and I'm still going in. Yeah, and then I end up paying the price for it. So what can I take away from this one? Well, pretty clear that I was incredibly tunnel visioned on this fight when it doesn't really make sense because my ult is down. I don't have flash. I'm against like Gragas who can just completely obliterate me if I end up making a step too far forward. And I'm not really paying attention to the map, right? Like Riven already roamed mid. This should give me a sign that she's probably going to be roaming a lot more now that she already cracked the turret. And I wasn't paying attention to that. So this is where I think this is where my mistakes were. Like the micro is it's more so a macro issue rather than a micro one, I think, in this one. Boom, boom, boom. Skim through. Okay, now we find another death and another skirmish. And this is where we want to look at again. All right, so this is more of a tough one, right? It's not very clear that I made a mistake like directly. What the mistake here looks like is I need to assess the variables first, right? So let's take it first looking at the micro. Is there anything that I messed up in terms of my mechanics that would have led to this fight being bad? RQ I think is fine. I think this E doesn't really make a lot of sense. It puts me out of the fight for too long and it just kind of removes two of my possible movement abilities. So I think what could have been better is just me auto queuing there instead and being a little bit more patient. And at this point, I kind of have to kill the Gragas. So in terms of the mechanics, I'm not totally sure I like it. But let's see in terms of like the macro and understanding why this fight was happening. See if we can figure out something there. I mean, first off, right, Trundle is pushing top lane. So he's completely disconnected from the fight. Second thing is like Riven's incredibly strong at this point. And if she gets onto our backline, because our backline was like tunnel visioned on getting poke on this Gragas or something like that. So she had free access to our backline, which means that they're able to she's able to start the fight in a perfect position for herself. And we're basically just fighting this. I mean, it's 3v3 for a long time, but I don't necessarily know that because, okay, the Fiora support ended up popping up behind my Seraphine there. So, yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to take this fight because Trundle like was legit just not there. So it was just taking a 3v4 intentionally. And on top of that, I didn't play it very well mechanically. And I'm also fighting against the most fed member on their team. So I think what I can take away from my skirmishes that went wrong this game is like a lot of it is me not paying attention to how the skirmish is forming, what tools I have to play it. Like, do I have R? Do I have my teammates around? Is everyone in position to follow up? It might be good for me to be asking those questions going into my next games. And that's pretty much it. It really just comes down to those simple things. Do not overcomplicate your reviews. You do not need to go through every second of the game. Just skim through, just tap your right arrow key on your keyboard and find those impactful plays that are important to you to be able to resolve. Whether it's your laning that you feel like is not up to par, maybe it's your skirmishing, maybe it's how you're side laning, whatever it is, you just need to hone in on those things and fix the biggest issues that come across. And I don't think it's bad to sometimes go through an entire game just to get a feel of what is actually going wrong, especially sometimes you might not even know until you look back at it and see a whole game perspective. But at the end of the day, don't make it a chore. Reviewing should be short and sweet most of the time. Just take away a couple of important learnings that you got from those games and keep moving on. So hopefully this gives you a good idea about how you can better use reviewing in your own process. So best of luck, guys. Good luck in solo queue, and I'll catch you in the next one.